Hi there, I'm John and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So I know I said I'll be more consistent with updates, but it seems the last update has been since the past 2 weeks and it has not been intentional. I've just had difficulties like being able to film the videos, and I just actually finished my thesis, so I think now I have more time on my hands. It's just like I just need to find a way to balance myself, just coming fresh off of like my usual routine with school and trying to just it's like trying to learn learn like life anew, because it's like learning a new stage of life, learning how to feel. Like what filled my days before now was like the constant going to school, coming back home and all, and now that's not there again. So I think that's where I am at currently. I'm trying to just balance myself. But in the time I've been away, I have been reading, not so much but at least consistently, and I think now the books which I have to talk about on here are kind of piling up, so I kind of want to get on it. And this is June. I would really like to participate in like the mid-year book freakout tag, whatever it's called. I really like that tag every year, so I think I would like to get some videos out before putting that there. For today, it's a video that has been long overdue. It's a book review of Stoner by John Williams, the internet's maybe most beloved NYRB classic I have seen. And yeah, this is an internet darling, and I have been meaning to read this. I actually finished this last year in December, on the last day of the year, and so I've been postponing it, but it's here. The review is here, and yeah, let's get into it. I was lucky to find a copy of this year with a vendor online, and yeah, it shocked me when I saw it, because I had been resulting to maybe borrowing it from like the Internet Library Archive, and so, but I saw it here and it was like really cheap, so I just pounced on it. And yes, I read it because a lot of my friends on Bookstagram, and I've seen a lot of people here praise this as well, in the vein that the general public praises it, and yeah, I wanted to check it out. So Stoner by John Williams looks at the entirety of a man's life from the beginning of his birth to his death. We are told initially on the first page, we just get this like biotype. That's like our intro into the book. It's a biotype chapter about like the entirety of his life summarized in a way, and that's what launches us into the book. Then from there we now get like the nitty-gritty into the various stages of our titular character William Stoner's life. The book begins in the 1910s. He is born in a small farm, where he's like assisting his parents every day. It's that very homey life where it's just him, his mother and his father for like years at a stretch, and he gets an opportunity to go to school at, I think, Columbia University, if I'm not mistaken. And this in a way is where his life really starts out, because coming before this, it has just been the same old routine over and over again, but this like launches him into a new phase of his life. And from the beginning of the novel, it's like plagued with a certain kind of melancholy, and we just get it from the onset, from the beginning of his life. There's just this, it is just drenched with melancholy. The writing, the way we are let into his life, it is just like it's soaked in it. And from getting into school, that's like his humble beginnings. Getting into school, the novel takes us through like a full timeline of William Stoner's life. And from the beginning of his life, we see that he's like a very tame person, having not like before college, not having many relations like with people like at all, not having, I don't really think we are told of any relation he has like with other people of his age before college. And so getting to college, it's like there's this fresh adjustment, and I knew from the beginning that this was going to be a book I like would at least want to see through to the end, because it's from the beginning it gives me, I think, what I require at the beginning. Give me enough that will make me continue reading, and there's nothing that makes me want to like read a book more than when it's about a character's life, examining a whole character's life. And some of my favorite works like A Little Life does that. On getting into college, we get a stoner. He kind of is assigned a course initially, but then it's not like the right fit for him, and in his like second year I think he transfers to English, and I think that is where his life really begins, because while at the beginning we get this man who is just like very tame. Williams writes him very like his character type is very tame, very like there's not much excitement to his life, but getting into that second year, like seeing that okay he has like a certain passion for English, that's like that's the first opening we see in his life. That's the first point where Williams gives like a bit of like excitement into the character's life, not necessarily the story is like story holds on its own before that, but it's the kind of book where you are just like, it's not about how he like plans to impress you. I think you are impressed regardless, because of just like all you desire to follow, all you desire to know is how this character's life goes. It's not like it's not like some books, even like storytelling heavy books like this, where it's not major plot, character studies more. It's not like some of those where you still like desire more excitement, and no, it's not like that here. Everything what we are just sitting along for the ride. Everything we are here for is the story William intends to tell us about this man's life. And I think from getting into school we get a bit of, that's where William Stoner the character gets the little excitement in his life, and we see as he graduates, then he eventually goes on to get married to a woman named Edith. And I think the core of like his life, what entirely characterizes Stoner's life, we see in the book is his school beginnings, where he like gets his job as a professor, his marriage, and that's like the entirety of this man's life. I think this sadness, you get like the hints that his life is very bleak early on, like I said, because of the very first pages of the book, like what it tells us about how his life plays out. It tells us, but what we just see is how these things play out as the chapters follow, and we get that initial hint of like bleakness and emptiness in his life, but we just begin to see it as the story progresses forward, and we see that it follows him into his marriage as well. He gets a job as a professor before eventually in following years he gets married. And I think something we see is that we do not get a moment where anything you consider like a major landmark in someone's life, like a marriage, birth of a child, we don't get a moment here where that's like the definitive point of Stoner's life. And I think something that interested me in how like the story was crafted, everything just like kind of like moves on a straight line in the character's life, which I found very fascinating. And I think when we get to the segment where he gets married, that's kind of like, it's not a point where the sadness lifts. We kind of see that the sadness just kind of progresses, because early into the marriage, of how he has lived up until that point, we kind of see that, oh wow, like he comes to a shocking realization that the marriage he gets into, it's not like what he thought it was, but at the same time we learn that he did not have any idea of what he actually thought it was. And William describes it saying within a month he knew that his marriage was a failure. Within a year he stopped hoping that it would improve. And yeah, we just kind of see that it's like getting into a marriage, and it kind of becomes a prison, because it's like not learning we learn that both parties do not learn what like the marriage entails before coming into it, and now they come into it. And they're unable to know what to do with it. I think we just see that there's so much sadness from the beginning, where we get introduced to him and his family in college. It's not just sadness, it's just the bleakness, because it kind of travels with him into the marriage as well. And there's just so much that aggravates me as the story continues. Not even about I think William crafts such an interesting character in the sense that there are so many things that happens in his life that affects you, and there are so many things that affected me, like that I questioned, like you being a reader observing another person's life. I think this is a very human story, and so there are so many things that you would wonder, like why are you not doing this way, or like it's just like sometimes there were points where like you really just want to scream, because like how does someone live this way? And one of my favorite things about what Williams does with this novel is that as the story progresses, while there's not very much excitement to Stoner's life, we learn how he becomes a professor after he graduates from college. He eventually becomes a professor at the college where he schooled, an English professor. And I think John Williams, he sells to us that Stoner really loved his profession. I think that was one of like the phenomenal things about this book. You get the sense that this is a man who is in love with his passion, who is in love with this thing he teaches. And I think like that was kind of like when I said there was no like major movement in his life, in a sense, that was maybe like the pinnacle of anything that we would term excitement for him, because then like you see how he just falls more and more and more in love with it. And although it's not like, I don't think it's the kind of life that someone, when you read through it's not the kind of life that you consider like, let's say, a very happy life, but while the character is not extremely happy with maybe the state of his life, the state of his marriage, we are able to get this, we do not get the sense, we see. And William lets us know it's impossible to deny that he's in love with like English, in love with literature, he's in love with his passion. I really liked, like there were some academic sections here. I think there were some academic sections where there were like talks of like some English periods, some periods and the literature that inspired those periods. While I did not really necessarily like understand or get them, because I was not like familiar with them, and I'm not really very conversant with a lot of like the major movements in literature, because it's not what is taught here all the time. At the same time, they just really fascinated me with the way Williams like wrote those passages and wrote those parts, because they are just like, they keep you engaged. I think the character voice in those moments are some of like the strongest, because like the writing is so self-assured. And although like I do not know much, I do not mind reading. I do not mind just like reading Stoner talk about like the things that interest him, and it's kind of in a segment where he's like giving lectures. It's how he relates to the students, how he talks to them. I think in college sometimes you do not always like I did not like end up liking any of my professors really, or like having a deep affection for any of them through their teachings or something. But it's just like, it's the kind of lecturer that will speak and kind of intrigue you, and like you may not necessarily like him, but you just get a deep sense of respect for him, because then you see that this man likes what he's doing, and this man is good at what he's doing. Throughout the course of the novel, one thing we can see though is that there's a kind of sameness to how Stoner is written, with the entire like bleak thing, with the entire like, let's say, sad thing. It's kind of consistent in a way, but it's not like it takes away from the novel. Normally getting a story, like getting, let's say, halfway into it, 150 pages, 200 pages, like having this character just kind of feel stagnant in his own life would kind of feel tiring sometimes. I think here where Williams excels with it is that there's character development. We see a very evident character development. William Stoner, as we meet him at the beginning, although he does not, let's say, get happier, it's not the same person who we meet at the middle. And while it does not seem like some of the things in his life like kind of makes him happier, we kind of see like they do affect his personality in a way, whether it's when he gets his daughter, or whether it's like the course he's teaching in school. We kind of see how, although it does not lift the sadness from him, it does affect the character's personality. And I think like one of the best things about, like in its entirety, the character construction that John Williams does here, it's just like phenomenal. And you get a, like I said, you just get a full character. You get a life, an actual life. This is a lived life for some people. Yeah, there were times where I did not particularly like storytelling choices, like when Stoner would, like, maybe when he would get a little excitement in his life, it kind of washed everything else to the background. So it will be like it's something good happening in his life, but it's like his daughter and his wife, his marriage kind of like fades to the background, and you imagine that that's like an integral part of someone's life, and like we get pages and stretches of pages of things happening, but like we are not getting references to how he's like relating at home, or how, like, because we are getting, let's say, weeks passing, months passing, but we are not seeing necessarily how like the things going on in his life are affecting his like family at home. And I kind of found that like a bit off-putting at points, the way little joys would like eclipse every other thing in his life. But in a way, we can also, like, there's a point where we look at it from the angle that this is how like it actually felt for the character, which you can tell like there's a lot of like character consideration put into like the crafting of this novel, in the sense that we can say when he was really happy, because the marriage was not very good. It's a very rocky marriage, but we can see how the little excitements, his classes, his teaching were probably the things that were lifting him up and saving him. And in a way, it happens where you just get entirely like invested in certain things, and it just kind of washes everything to the back. So I can see it from that angle. I did fine, but the only reason I just found it a bit odd was that it's not like it happens once. It's kind of like a recurring thing throughout like the novel, the excitement and eclipsing everything back from like integral things you consider integral. But yeah, it's not like it was something that was so like detrimental to my reading experience. One of the things I really liked about it's a very subtle thing, but this, like I said at the beginning, it begins like in the 1910s, early late 1910s, and so it follows from there. And I really like the way John Williams like incorporated like the historical events of the time into this book, and we get to see how it affects the time in the story and the time around the character's life without being like overly dwelt on, overly addressed, overly like discussed, but they are incorporated into the story in such a way that you feel their impact, or you feel the necessity of them being put here, because like a story of a person's life, and it's not like it's attempting to do like historically inaccurate things. It's not a fantasy story. It's placed in a time where like things in that time happened that disoriented like the world at large and disoriented the space where like this story is set. So I like how they were not avoided, but how they were not like harped on in a way where they became like the story and took away from the story, because they are touched in a way that you see their significance of being included here. And I think the best one because we see 1910s, like World War One happens around that period, then we get his life we get a good portion of his life, and so with World War Two happens. But yeah, I think the best one he explored was World War One, and yes, like I said, it was not overly touched, but it kind of made a significant dent in Stoner's character, which I found very interesting, and I was glad that was done in a way, because that specific war kind of like affected the young men of that time, maybe coming fresh off of college. And we see how he's like at a point, there's the thing with enlisting in that time, and a lot of the young people enlisting and friends enlisting. It kind of like touches him in the sense that he decides not to enlist. And so we just see like how that time marks that period of his life, because when you were not doing that, then what else were you doing? And I really just kind of liked that Stoner included that in this story. I think it was probably very significant to his character development in a way, as you would imagine it was significant to the men who were going to fight for the war in that time. You would think like it was that important, like, because if you were not going, you were having like the things said about you and perceived as weak, and if you were going, you were like probably risking your life to never come back, and it was a 50-50 thing. So yeah, that was one of the things I really enjoyed that Williams does in the novel. And I see that if even if it was not included, if either of like historical events were not included, me not being from America, I don't think I would have like maybe known, because I do not like deeply study the history of the country. So it's like I might not have known, it might not have affected me too much, because then like I would not like always think of this like events in context to like time, maybe when reading a book, except that's what like the book is about, right? And so it's not something that is always at the forefront of my mind. So it could have worked that way maybe for me, but I don't think it would have worked that way generally. So it was just kind of smart that it was put in as well. I really think this book, it's an achievement in like a character study, because it's less than 300 pages. It's like, but Williams, like the life we get, William Stoner's life, it's full. It is like a lived life. It's just such a short span to write about an entire life and like still have it affect so much. Yeah, Stoner by John Williams, a book that looks at a man's life characterized by sadness and a failed marriage, and his like probably most exciting thing was his academia, his ties to academia. And yes, we are told at the beginning, like I've said over and over and over, so you don't think like it's spoilers or something. We are told at the beginning, giving just this little very 1-2 page intro about like his little life. That's how it's kind of put, because it's like a full life that not much happens in, but it's still a full life regardless. And so I really think like the point, like what Williams does with this like character, this is a character study, what he does is phenomenal. And I really liked this book. I actually really liked it. It was in my honorable mention last year. I gave it 4 stars. And yes, addressing the classic status, I think it's a classic for a reason probably, but the masterpiece status, I would not say I fall on that train with everybody. I would not say I fall on that train with it being like one of the greatest things of all time. It's rightly a very beloved book. I can see why. And yeah, I liked what it did for me, and I highly enjoyed it, and I will really recommend this book to anyone who has not read it. And yeah, I don't know if something I will reread, but I can see it being something I come back to and like just liking it as much, and maybe even picking up little things on. So yeah, William Stoner or John Williams' Stoner, and yeah, really good book. And so that brings us to the end of the video. I'm sure if this gets a bit dark, it's getting like a bit late here, but yes, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I did a bit of justice to Stoner, and I hope I just improve with the reviews as I go on. It's just my desire to grow with it, because it's something I really love, and it's what I would like to do for work as well, writing on what I like to read. That's my actual passion, and just writing in general. And so yeah, more videos definitely coming up. I owe an April wrap up, so, and a May wrap up now, so those two definitely come eventually. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, sharing and subscribing, and I would love to have more of us here. And if you have read Stoner, please let me know and tell me what you thought of it. And yes, please, I always like to ask what you are currently reading, and just let me know. And my major read at the moment is a very old mass market book you'll probably see in a future wrap up that does not fit me at all with all like you have seen me read, but I like for fun or something, and like a contemporary novel as well. And I'm still reading, there's this like memoir essay collection on friendship, Friendaholic by Elizabeth Day. I'm reading that as well. So, and Assembly by Natasha Brown. And yes, more content to come. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.